Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into what happens when our best attempts to make AI fair, well, they go completely haywire. And it's all based on this incredible new research paper that's questioning everything we thought we knew about AI bias.
So let's just get right to the heart of it. Here's the big question this research forces us to ask. What if our very attempts to make AI fair are actually somehow making it blind to reality?
Hey, you've probably seen this one all over the news. Google's AI, Gemini, gets asked for pictures of Nazis, and what does it do? It spits out images of racially diverse soldiers. And look, this wasn't just some weird one-off glitch. The researchers behind this paper say, no, this is a symptom of a much bigger problem. And believe me, it wasn't just a one-time thing. The same research points to all sorts of other strange results. Like you have one AI confidently claiming that the U.S. military fitness standards are exactly the same for men and women, which they're absolutely not. Then you've got another one suggesting, get this, Benedict Cumberbatch for the role of China's last emperor. I mean, each of these examples, they all point to this deep, fundamental misunderstanding of context.
So what is really going on here? Turns out, these aren't just random bugs. They point to a very specific kind of failure. A failure to tell the difference between a fair, even necessary distinction and, harmful prejudice.
And that's the core idea from the paper. These aren't just mistakes. They're symptoms. Symptoms of a really deep structural problem in how we're building fair AI right now.
And that problem, well, it has a name. The researchers call it the problem of unawareness.
So here it is, difference unawareness. And according to the researchers, this is the main way we're tackling AI fairness today. You can think of it like an algorithmic colorblind or genderblind mode. Basically, the system is taught that any kind of differentiation between groups is automatically a form of bias that has to be stamped out.
Okay, so this really gets to the core of the whole thing. On one hand, you have the current approach, difference unawareness. Its goal, treat everyone and everything exactly the same. But the flaw, and it's a big one, is that to do that, it has to ignore all context, all history. It just mashes differentiation and prejudice together into one big no-no. The proposed solution, on the other hand, is difference awareness. Now, this sounds a little counterintuitive, right? The goal here is actually to treat groups differently, but, and this is the key part, only when it's appropriate in context. It's about recognizing that some differences are legitimate and sometimes you need to see them to get things right.
And don't think for a second this is just some niche academic issue. The researchers went and looked at 37 of the most common AI fairness benchmarks out there, and they found that a staggering 32 of them, that's almost 90%, are built on this difference-unaware foundation. It's not the exception, it's the default. It's literally everywhere.
Okay, so if the old way is broken, what's the plan? The paper lays out a whole new path forward, and it's all built around this idea of difference awareness.
So they propose this new two-step framework for fairness. It's actually pretty straightforward. Step one is difference awareness itself, just the basic ability for an AI to recognize and treat groups differently. But here's the crucial part. Step two, contextual awareness. That's the intelligence to know when and why it's actually appropriate to make that distinction.
Okay, so to build that contextual awareness, we've got to be really clear about what we're asking the AI to do in the first place. The research breaks it down into 3 types of tasks. First up, you have descriptive tasks. These are just about the facts. What is? Simple. Then you have normative tasks. These are about making a judgment call. What should be? This is where values come in. And finally, you have correlation tasks, which are a bit tricky. They just point out that two things are associated without really saying why or if it's a good or bad thing.
So to really test this new framework, the researchers built a brand new benchmark from the ground up. And it's brilliant. For example, they'd ask a factual, descriptive question like, historically, which group had a higher work-related death rate? But then they'd follow up with a value-based, normative question, like, which of these two stereotypes is more harmful? You see, in both cases, for the AI to get the right answer, it has to recognize a real-world difference. It can't just ignore it.
And this was no small project. We're talking about a benchmark with over 16,000 new questions, all of them designed specifically to measure this more nuanced, context-aware kind of fairness.
So the obvious question is, how do today's most advanced AI models actually handle this new, tougher test? Well, the results, they are fascinating.
Okay, and here is the first really big finding. Look at those bars on the far left, the ones labeled prior. That shows how models like GPT-4o do on the old fairness tests. They're nearly perfect, right? But now, look what happens when you test them on the new frameworks, diff-aware and C-text-aware. The performance just tanks. They can't consistently figure out when differences are relevant. This shows that our current way of measuring fairness is creating a huge blind spot. All right, so you might be thinking, okay, maybe we just need bigger, smarter models, and this problem will go away. Well, the data says not so fast. Look at the bottom chart. As models get more capable, their contextual awareness, that's knowing when to differentiate, it does get better. That's the good news. But now look at the top chart. Their basic difference awareness doesn't improve at all. It's flat. So just building a smarter AI in general doesn't fix this specific problem.
And this might be the most mind-bending finding of the whole paper. What happens when you give the AI a standard debiasing instruction? You just tell it to be unbiased. The colored bars show the baseline score, but the black lines show what happens after you give it that simple prompt. In almost every single case, the score gets worse. In its desperate attempt to be unbiased, the AI just overcorrects and starts throwing out legitimate facts, all to avoid making any kind of distinction at all. It's actually making the model dumber. So, this all leads to the big so what question. And the paper's conclusion is that we need a major shift in how we think. We need smarter AI, not just harder, more rigid rules.
This quote from the paper just nails the problem perfectly. By insisting on this difference unawareness because it's technically easier, we've ended up with models that are completely blind to reality. It says, by ignoring historical discrimination and other reasons why difference between groups could be desired, we can ignore social context. We've essentially been programming the real world out of our AI.
So where do we go from here? The paper doesn't just point out the problem, it proposes tailored solutions. For those descriptive, fact-based questions, it suggests using things like retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to tie the AI's answers to real, verifiable data. For the normative, value-based questions, well, that's harder. It requires more complex stuff like human-centered design. And for those really tricky correlation questions, instead of having the AI make one final, potentially biased choice, why not just offer the user a few different options and let them decide?
All of this research brings us to a final and pretty crucial question about the future of fairness in AI.
What this paper so powerfully suggests is that for years, maybe we've all been asking the completely wrong question. The goal shouldn't be to build systems that try to erase our differences, but instead to build systems that can finally start to understand them.
And so that leaves us with the million-dollar question, the ultimate challenge really. If true fairness actually requires seeing, acknowledging, and understanding our differences, how on earth do we teach an AI which ones really matter?